To już ostatni odcinek Kanapy na Horyzoncie. Kończymy ten cykl z przytupem. Jesteśmy w Hali Stulecia i to jest cudowne być tutaj i mieć tak komfortowe warunki, za co bardzo dziękujemy. I trudno mi sobie wyobrazić lepsze miejsce do podziękowań dla naszych partnerów. Szczególnie chciałbym podziękować firmie Grupa Wróbel Mercedes-Benz. Dziękujemy za możliwość realizacji tego cyklu. Jak również chciałbym podziękować firmie Weft. Ten wspaniały, ręcznie tkany dywan sprawił, że było nam tutaj naprawdę dużo przyjemniej. Dziękujemy również firmie Bo Concept za kanapę, która jeździła z nami po różnych miejscach Wrocławia. A dzisiaj z nami jest Ann Oren, reżyserka filmu Piaf. Hi Ann, I'm so grateful that we are having you at the mBank New Horizons, especially in this magical place.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Yeah, it's actually it's your second time you are presenting the film at the New Horizons.
Yes.
But this time it's your first feature film.
Yeah, first fiction film. Yeah.
Yeah. So could you just introduce the film, the Piaf, to our audiences? I mean, just simple themes, subject, character.
Well, the film is about a Foley artist. And for those of you who don't know what a Foley artist is a sound professional for film that uses their body to record sounds to enhance the illusion of reality in the film. Things that were not recorded or caught properly in the shoot, like usually footsteps, clothing swooshes.
In a way, sound maker.
Sound maker. But it's really important that they record this with their own bodies. They reenact. And the character in my film is a female Foley artist who's creating sounds for a commercial featuring a horse. And in the process of creating the sounds for the horse, she grows a horse tail.
How did you come up with this idea? Because actually horse tail and horses are really important topic of the film. Why horses?
First of all, well, it's a combination of my interest in horses and my interest in Foley artists. The horse was also the most associated animal with the history of cinema because the photographer Edward Muybridge did the first pre-cinematic experiments with image in motion, famously did it with horses. Originally it was to settle a bet if when a horse gallops, he ever lifts all four hooves off the ground. And he set a set of still cameras to shoot a horse while it's moving, and of course we know that they do lift all the hoofs off the ground, but before that they were not sure. And then there is the horse in motion famous, it's an animation that was made out of these images. So because the Foley artist is also a filmmaker, I thought it would be interesting to work with this animal. And also there is a parallel of I call it the theater of submission that you see specifically in the dressage horse riding between a horse and a rider that's a tenth of its weight, and how together they do something. They need to become sports partners to really do it, and how they make it look like an effortless ballet, you could say. And yeah, the first idea that I had I was really interested in Foley artists because first of all, a lot of people that don't know that this profession exists, and I'm interested how they work alone in dark rooms, and they repeat again and again an action that they see on the screen in order to create an illusion of reality. That is a theme that's been in my work always, creating illusions of reality, or how we experience reality through screens, and how, especially in the artistic process, you're trying to reenact something until you become it, which is a lot of what happens to her in the film.
You strongly explore themes of actually interspecies relationships. It's really interesting because we had so many movies about fluid sexuality. You go even deeper, I would say, and you explore these ideas. Why? I mean, what do you find interesting in these subjects? What inspires you to explore them?
Well, I think a state of this fluidity or being in between these are the most interesting moments about being human. You know, when you're not sure where you belong, and there's I think the character goes through a coming of age. And I think in American films, whenever they talk about coming of age, they always relate to teenagers. But I think that throughout our lives, we have so many points where we have several coming of ages, or comings of age, and I'm particularly interested in having a very bodily or visceral experience for the character and try to transmit this to the viewers. So I think that these states when we're not sure how to categorize ourselves or trying to, I think she's in a process of definition, or eventually she's not defining it, but she's you can say she has a fluid sexuality and she has a fluid species identity throughout the film, and this is where our personality reveals itself to us. So it's not too. There's a lot of room for the viewer when they watch the film to figure out what the character is going through. I'm not defining it too strictly. And I hope in this way also a lot of audiences, especially young audiences, can find themselves within this state of flux that the character is going through.
Mm-hmm. I think that this fluidity you are talking about can be seen also in the film form. Mm-hmm. I wonder how you wanted to actually express it through the visual form.
Well, first of all, I mean, I chose to shoot on 16 millimeters. It was very important to get this very visceral intimacy between the viewer and the character. And because shooting on film, you have sometimes light leaks. Sometimes it's at the end of, sometimes it's by mistake, sometimes it's the end of a take or end of a roll. And I try to use it to enhance the materiality of the film and use it in a dramatic or emotional level at some particular moments that the character is going through. And it's a lot also in the mise-en-scène, the way that you use the tail when she's running, trains, a lot of more the visual motifs. I don't know if it's just like the film, but it was very important.
Actually, was it the real horse tail that the main character actually grows, or
if you mean if it's a real tail of a horse?
Yeah.
No, actually, a real horse tail. I have like so many of them in my apartment. Actually.
How come?
Because like in developing of the film, it was very important. They're actually sold for to make bows for violins and cellos. Because I was trying to like, who's selling these things? But they're like coming from like old dead horses, and they dye them to be in a uniform color. They're very, very heavy. So to attach this to the actress, we used, I mean, I don't want to reveal all the secrets of the production, but we had a tail master that was in charge of doing that. And we used some alternative materials for that.
It's very interesting what you're talking about, because it's funny that actually horses' hair is used to produce tools for people, because nowadays I think we are thinking about animals in different way. We think about them not as objects, but in a way they have their own agency, right? And was it these changes that we can see in the world? I mean, changing our perspective on animals. Was it inspiring for you to actually convey the story?
Well, it came up in research. Horses in particular were always exploited by men. I mean, for transport, like riding, fighting, and so they are domesticated animal. I think though that when I read about how they're being trained now, like for riding, previously there were more, and I read a lot about relationships between women and horses in particular. If you go to dressage stables, for example, you see almost only women. And I think that it used to be more men that used to train horses, and they would call it to break them in, which was a more aggressive approach to how to train a horse.
It's a way of domination.
Exactly. And now that there are more women trainers, That's what I read. There's a more approach, more to try to find a way to communicate with them in a much more gentle way to train the horses, because for a horse to do these dressage moves, it's many years of training. So it's a much more gentle, and I think they do this also with training dogs. They're like more ways to train them that really treat them with a lot of respect and sensitivity. So then the horses are not traumatized by this whole experience. And
this is actually the title of the film, Piaf. It's actually about it, right? I mean, because it's a way that horse behave when it's treated with some kind of violence, as you said.
Not exactly. Piaf, it comes from Italian piaffe originally, which is like stomping in place with excitement, and it comes from days of battle on horseback when the riders wanted to keep the horse in motion in a constant state of excitement, almost like the football players, before they start, they're kind of piaffing there. So that's where I took this from, and it's the first movement that the horse is doing when Eva, the protagonist, is beginning the foley in the film, and it is also a parallel to some situations in her own life that she puts herself in when she's waiting in place with excitement, waiting for something to happen.
Submission and domination are important topics in your film.
Yeah.
And there are many erotic scenes that use. Yeah, of course. They use, the tool of erotic and desire and all these subjects. And I think it's, after the Me Too movement, it's more and more difficult to produce and distribute movies that expose disturbing images. Is it something that you thought about it? Because we are talking, and our interview will be published on YouTube. YouTube is very strictly forbidden images like this and on their platform. So it's more difficult to distribute a film that has disturbing images.
Yeah, I mean, it's something to consider. You always need to. You always live in your now, so you know how. When you want to have an image that is provocative, you think what will be provocative now, because actually what you can see online, the kind of pornography that circulates,
of course,
is very vulgar, and but it's not disturbing because it's we've already seen everything. So how do you? I wanted to have a certain a surreal eroticism that I've not seen before, because otherwise I have no reason to stage this. But in a way, you can say that it's provocative, but there's like almost no nudity actually, and everything you see is surreal, is not realistic. So it's, I think one critic said it's like there are sexual scenes without sex. So if somebody's disturbed by it, I think that they can ask themselves, what are you actually provoked by? And also, like apropos the Me Too movement, there is, in Piaf, there is everything that happens is between consensual adults. So the problem is when there is no consent, but when you have adults and they are, in this case, it's a lot about encountering a new person and having a physical attraction to them without knowing the full story of who this person is, and that's what part of what keeps it very exciting. So for the character, as her body is changing and she's trying to figure out who she is, what can her body do, and discovering that it has a lot of power over others, and whether she accepts it or not, or likes it or not, is something that the audience has to see for themselves. I don't want to say this, but yeah, I don't think that there is there are no characters in the film that are victims in any way. So I think that at first, maybe when people would read the script, they would not know how to take it today. So I had to defend it myself. But I think when you see the finish, you see it in the film, I don't think it can be interpreted in a bad way. Just some people. Maybe when some people are not so comfortable with their own sexuality, they would have a problem, and it's not because of the connection between the people. I think what could be disturbing to some is the fact that she is an interspecies entity. And this is the part that could make some people uncomfortable. But this is okay. I don't think that films need to make people comfortable. And if you feel like you're being pushed a little bit as a viewer, it makes you reflect on your own life. And I think that this is also a very important experience that I really want to bring. And I think that we're nowadays with all our devices, we're bombarded with so much media, and that doesn't really consider the body of the viewer that is watching it. So we're all becoming blobs and consume a lot of media. And it was very important for me to try to somehow access it through the use of this grainy film and the sound design, especially together with the process of a character that's going through a transition, emotional, spiritual, and physical, and makes the viewer to consider their own at the same time.
What would you like the audience to take away from this film? What kind of feelings or emotions, thoughts?
Well, I want them to have I want the viewer to leave the cinema room with the film in their body, and then after a few days they will really understand what this story was for them in their brain. And a lot of people told me that they watch it and then it didn't leave them alone, and only a few days later they figure out what this film means for them, and they don't always have the same realization of what it is. I think it raises questions about normalcy, of course, about categorizations in society, about our relationships to animals, also to plants, with the inclusion of the ferns in the film. Yeah. Our openness to discovery throughout our lives, or this kind of coming of age, because a lot of people, they define themselves to themselves at a pretty young age, and then this doesn't really change. And also what happens to our imaginary when we spend a lot of time in the dark in front of screens by ourselves.
To what extent all these topics were relevant for you? I mean, because you were born in Israel, now you live in Berlin. Yeah. And actually I think that the music of the film really takes from the Berlin techno scene. It's quite obvious for me. But yeah, what's the personal
connection
part? Yeah, connection.
Well, first of all, I didn't live in Israel as an adult. I lived in New York most of my adult life, and then I moved to Berlin in 2015. And when I mentioned New York, because I used to live there, and in America is the only country in the world where you're allowed to, on television, to broadcast commercials for prescription medications. And when I was there, I had a television, and I was watching. Most interestingly for me were the commercials, and I was watching these commercials, and especially psychiatric mood stabilizers, antidepressants, and so on that they were advertising. And they cannot sell you the pill, but they can tell you, ask your doctor about Akvili, like in the film. And then I chose to make the commercial that Eva is creating Foley for a mood stabilizer, which I think is a very contemporary product that is very easily prescribed for anybody that that shows interest or has some distress in life. And many times this is a way to deal with problems. There are different levels of needing of this product, let's say, some more than others. And so that was a big inspiration for the commercial. And then, of course, like I was always working with the moving images. So I personally spent a lot of time editing material or trying to, many times I work with appropriated footage, like found footage that I cut into a new artistic statement. So you're trying to create something out of scraps by yourself. And in this way, I really connected with the experience of the Foley artists, what they're trying to do to convince the viewers that what they're watching on the screen is real, and doing it again and again and again and again. And then you step out on the street and you feel like you have an intense connection with a bunch of images in motion, and then you have to deal with live people again with their own changing thoughts that you have to be confronted with, as opposed to the recorded material that you look at again and again and again. So this kind of moment is something that I really wanted to explore in the film.
What was your personal motivation to explore these topics? I mean, what's your idea of, well, identity?
I think that it's something that is very fluid and changing, and I feel that personally I had like a lot of, as I see myself, different periods in my life, and it changed. It was really influenced by moving to Berlin, actually, because there was a really feeling of openness, liberation, sexual, personal, everything is tolerated without criticism, and you just by going to places or going to events that interest you, you're going to very easily meet like-minded people. The whole clubbing scene, I think it's really, clubbing is it's not just pure, it's not just hedonism. It's really something almost like meditation that I think I recommend everybody at least like once a month to go to like a good clubbing night, a way for you to reconnect with your body. And I think
it's better than pills, I suppose.
Absolutely better than pills. And also it's interesting that Piaf, if you look at the horse doing a Piaf, this trotting in place, stomping in place, it really looks like the way that clubbers are dancing.
Yeah.
And that's how I originally made the connection between the clubbing scenes there, or the way that Eva is actually going to a club in order to reconnect with her own body. This is so important, I think, especially now that we're glued to all these screens. Really, I think there's a crazy disconnect from our bodies, and there are different ways to find it. Maybe that's why there's also like a renaissance of rituals, and I don't know, even things like without substances like vipassana and other ways to go into an altered state of mind. And so, and I think that there's like a lot of power in techno music because it's meditative.
That's a very interesting point of view. I never thought about it as kind of meditation, but you're right. I think it is. What are other ways for you to reconnect with your body, apart from
that I can say in the interview?
Music, especially in such a place, right?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of like being in nature.
Yeah.
That's another actually amazing thing about. I don't know if like architecture is something that connects me with. I mean, it's something for me to admire. I don't know if it connects me with my own body. It usually makes me feel very small. I'm anyhow small, but in a big building. But
actually, when you are in nature, you feel connected to it because you feel you are part of something greater. And in a way, I think we can feel the same here. I mean, it's bigger than us, and I feel connected to the architecture and like to the nature.
I think it comes when I'm in nature. I feel more connected to all the, depending on where. But like for example, if I walk around in the forest, which is something that I do often. It's a feeling of connectedness to the entire world. Actually, away from civilization, away from architecture, and away from other people, more to other species, and makes me think of how it's a realignment, a recentering. I think also with when you think about animal, I mean. I don't know. I mean, a horse is is a very domesticated animal that you ride. It's not like a dog or a cat that you pet. But I don't know. I mean, I love architecture, but I don't think that it's. I mean, I associate it with culture, not with the world at large, and it doesn't make me think of other species.
You started your creative. Career as a visual artist. Yeah. I wonder what you learned from this.
Well, I studied film, but while I was a film student, I already knew that I didn't want to tell stories. I felt that I need some time to find my own cinematic language that will be worth it to make a film that I won't be repeating somebody else. So then I went into working with installations, like always with the moving images in space. And I think that I wanted to understand the psychology of it in a physical space with multi-screens, different ways without having to tell a story, to work with sound, to work with familiar images, like a found footage that you cut into something else, with some animations, to talk about different experiences of reality that we face in the world through media culture. And what I learned, that what brought me to have this approach with Piaf is that we need to bring the body of the viewer back, and that was really important for me. So, and just addressing this and using a lot sound, because Eva has an attachment to the horse actually through the screen at first. Later she actually goes see the horse from the commercial, like the Star Horse, and but it happens through the screen, and something is through the screen happening to her own body, and the connection is happening through sound. And as a director, when you're working with sound to have an influence on the viewer, a certain manipulation, they don't realize that that's where it's coming from. When you're doing it with images, I think audiences are experienced and smart enough to understand that it's coming from that, even though they can still appreciate it, but they can detect it. But with sound, it's like really sneaky. So it can have a more powerful, thrilling effect on the viewer. And I realized that this is a chief storytelling tool for me. And as I said before, I wanted to tell a story that will stay with your body. So that's, I think, came from also working with images, understanding the limits of what can be done with an image. And also in the whole film started with these tableaus, these like the scene with the rose. I think it's like the first scene that I wrote, and thinking of how these kind of images can be developed into a moment between two characters where they feel each other with their bodies more than through dialogue. So there's very little dialogue in the film for this reason, which is a lot of what happens in reality when you meet a person that you don't really know, and what happens between us is really not what is being said, but something that we sense. Or if we don't sense, then there is no scene, there is no drama, which happens to her with some other characters. But between the main three, that this is the main mode of communication, and I wanted to transfer that through the cinematic mise-en-scène. Yeah.
We need to stop here, Ann. Thank you so much for the talk and your inspiring film. I hope you will come back with your next film to the New Horizon.
I hope so too. Thank you.
Thank you.